Hi, I'm Fred Burton here today with my good friend Cindy Marble, and we are both very excited to have Michael Evanoff, the CSO of Verkada, on. Mike is the Chief Security Officer and Strategic Advisor at Verkada, a leader in cloud based physical security solutions. He previously served as Assistant Secretary of State for Diplomatic Security, leading the world's most widely deployed law enforcement agency. Mike's service has earned him honors such as the U.S. Presidential Meritorious Service Award, three Department of State Superior Awards, and international decorations from Lithuania and Estonia. Mike brings 40 years of experience in corporate security and diplomatic protection, including leading roles with NATO, Coca Cola, HBC AG, Walmart International, and Jabil. Mike, welcome to the ONTIC Connected Intelligence podcast.
Fred, thank you very much. And good to see you and Sydney. Finally, we get to talk together.
For sure. Let me kick it off with your first question. Tell us a little bit, Mike, about yourself and your background.
Well, I'm very fortunate. When I say fortunate, I am. I'm humble in that sense that I'm very fortunate to be part of a time frame where in 1985, the U.S. Department of State, actually Security Office of Security for the precursor for DS, wanted to enhance and improve themselves. We've lost too many embassies, too many ambassadors. We were basically having our butt handed to us by the enemy, and we could not conduct diplomacy in that way. Absolutely not. So they rethought, how can we build a bureau with folks, guys and gals that really take it as a passion, not a job, because foreign service is a passion, just like Secret Service is a passion, right? You put yourself in front of a bullet, or you're putting yourself in front of protecting other people. It's a different DNA, right? And so I think they went out and combed and basically found us. We were very fortunate. I say us because, Fred, you were a part of that collection, that cohort. Obviously, you had police background. I didn't. I basically played football in college, and like, dude, I want to keep the adrenaline going and keep going with it. So, show me, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. So I was just an eager guy at 23 years old. Very fortunate to be at the right time, right place for the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, being born at that time, and you know it very well.
Thank you, Mike. It certainly is amazing when you think back over the years. And I know you and Cindy are very good friends as well. And it's always a pleasure in our podcast to have folks on we know and have similar experience. And I have to say this, that I think the mark you led on our old organization, the Diplomatic Security Service, that some of the successes and changes that exist today are a large measure to the efforts that you put into that. So I think I speak for a good number of my old and former colleagues by saying, we thank you for what you have done for us.
No, it's the pleasure is mine. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I was asked to come back after our consulate in Benghazi, and you know this very well, was attacked. And Secretary Rice was asked by President Trump, listen, I don't want that on my watch. I need something to make sure that doesn't happen. And she says, listen, I think I know the person. I had 8 embassy postings overseas. Most of them were high threat, beginning with Philippines, Sarajevo during the war, and then basically Islamabad, Pakistan, before, during, and after 9/11. So in a lot of ways, running locations that were epicenters of terrorism was something I really enjoyed myself personally, and I wanted to kind of give back. So I left the private sector to take on a job that I think was probably the best job I had. Is basically make sure our people do not get jammed up again like that, but also work with the Foreign Service, work with the CIA, work with anybody that had anything to do with that night in the military. So a lot of it was not just clearing DS's house, but and working that, but it was also understanding, talking to the Near Eastern Affairs Bureau, political affairs, also understanding the CIA, what their mandate is and what they want to do in high threat locations that coexist with the U.S. diplomatic mission, right? And so that to me was okay, we're going to do this. We got to do this right. And I'm not afraid. I did break some glass. I mean, it had to, right? Because they were stovepipe. That night, September 12th, 2012, should have never happened. There was nine basically groups fighting each other. And we're trying to bring democracy into a location that didn't need it or want it. So yeah, I wanted to kind of make change a little bit.
It sounds like you were the right guy for, in the right place at the right time for that as well, Mike. That was a horrific event, and I'm very glad that you were brought back for that. You left private sector, you left DS, and then private sector, and then back to DS. Were there any lessons learned in private sector? I mean, you were having to, like you said, the whole diplomatic scene, having to get people to talk to each other, break down silos. What did you take from the private sector and bring it into that time as coming back as an assistant sector? Or
Listen, it's a great question. Absolutely fantastic question. And both of you probably know the answer. It's collaboration, right? In the private sector, a CSO, a chief security officer, can't live it by themselves. Maybe if you were a Secret Service agent, you can tell the staff, like, hey, this is not going to happen today. Diplomatic security, no, this is not going to happen. But in the private sector, can't live in that world. You got to work with everybody. And you got to find common ground to get a goal, right? Let's find a solution to your problem and my problem, right? It's just not just my problem, it's also their problem. So a business that basically takes on shareholder responsibility, it's like, yeah, we got to work together. And so I kind of took that, and it was interesting, as you say, because having had been in the financial world with a financial firm in New York, Oxzif, and then on to Coca-Cola Europe, basically, and then Walmart, you learn to basically get along with everybody, but also bring best practices and solutions to the thing. And it wasn't funny when somebody was coming back. I was not trepidant. I mean, this to me being a person that I'm happy to be here. Let's just get all along. That wasn't my mandate. My mandate is make sure we don't have another Benghazi. And the basically the Middle Eastern Affairs and Near Eastern Affairs, NEA Bureau wanted to be everywhere at every time. And they just said we couldn't do that. So yes, collaboration, but also a hard no in a lot of cases. And with a purposeful answer, right? Just not a made up no, right? You need to show that the reason we're going there is because of this, and that. And I remember the big question they wanted. Said, well, the Russians are there, the Dutch are in Libya. We need to be there. It's like, listen, they're not the United States. They don't have a target on the back. We do, right? So it's a different aspect.
I like the way you said, it's not necessarily a hard no, but it's a no, and here's the reason. Talking to a former colleague the other day, and we all face this in our work before. We don't get that many no's, and when we do say no, we really need to have it justified. We need to have reason for saying no, and I think that's one of the things that we've learned, throughout our careers is like, hey, it's not just no, and I'm not going to give you a reason, and we need to be able to lay out the reasons why we say no. So I think that's one thing that we brought from public sector to private sector is let me lay this out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's hard for most government people to go back in the private sector. And Fred knows this very well. You can't just take the hard nose and it's like, make it happen. And you'll be out easy very quickly.
Mike, it's interesting as a student of protective history, and looking at some of the cases that we were engaged with over the years, and obviously I wrote a book about Benghazi with our old friend Sam Katz, and I harken back to '86 when the Libyans hit our folks in Sana'a, Yemen, and Khartoum uh, hit our communicators there as they were driving to work, and those were Libyan-backed terrorist attacks. And I was always amazed in the kind of work we did overseas and trying to protect diplomats, how challenging it is, and how folks soon to forget. Um, Mike, I'd like to shift gears here if I would. I mean, I know you're at Verkada now. You guys are doing great things in the technology space. Can you speak a little bit about that as it pertains to like some of the things you're doing to help protect people and places?
Yeah, no, thank you for that because it is a very cool company. I'm very fortunate to be there. It's funny, they went after me for a year and I stiff armed them and said, no, I'm not a vendor. I'm a practitioner, right? And it's just like, dude, you got to at least see what we have.
What
And
were you, a running back in college, Mike? I thought that you were like a linebacker or something.
nose guard, actually, but we won't talk about that. But 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 the fact that Verkada said, "Hey, listen, let's see what we got," and it's like, okay, I'll see it. And what I saw was absolutely amazing. And I'm not just this is not hyperbole. This is reality. I need to really make this a point. When you have computer vision driven by AI to understand facial and license plate recognition, this is a game changer in a lot of ways and keep it connected all within one system. Every CSO, I mean, let me give you an example. I'll go back to Benghazi. Benghazi that night, we were attacked and we were burned to the ground. Our NVRs and DVRs went up in smoke. Basically, what we were recording in the cameras went up. There was nothing that went to the cloud because there's no cloud-based anything at that time, right? And so we would have found out if we had Verkada's system that night in Benghazi, we would have identified the leaders in the crowd that attacked our consulate. We would have used that information going to the tier one assets and to FBI to say, okay, he's our target. In a matter of weeks, maybe a month or two, we would have got them. Because we didn't have that, our NVRs blew up, we went and went in smoke. We then had to put assets on the ground, human assets, to identify who, what, where that happened that night. Took years instead of months. So to me, that is a big call about having not on-prem stuff. And the U.S. embassies still do on-prem stuff. And to me, that's a miss. And that's one of my hoping to change here. But Verkada, it basically has identified, hey, as a CSO, you probably want to know if you have a plant, if your people are wearing PPE or not. Well, they can tell you that. They can show you pre-operational surveillance if something is happening. If you see a white van and you recognize that white van in the past, and it's like, when was that white van happen? Well, you can go right to your phone and say, white van, January through December. And sure enough, it'll show every white van that came up. It's like, that's the one. And that
Amazing.
it is absolutely mine. For me, it's a very interesting thing that I believe has helped me really promote this space, but also can basically transfer it to where I came from. And I know with Cindy and with the Secret Service and what she has done in the past, the same thing, right? We could have utilized that at Butler, Pennsylvania, to identify that kid that was doing pre-operational walking around before that, right? If we would have put a tower with our cameras, right? I mean, it's anything is pre-operational surveillance. That's what we always know about attacks. It's you are at a point where an event is usually a precursor. There's a precursor to an event, right? If we can capture that with cameras, smart cameras that get smarter over time, and the firmware is basically sent over the camera. And to me, that's like, okay, guys, you got my attention. What do you want me to do? And that's why I'm here. I really want, I'm evangelizing it, but there's a lot of case studies that could be utilized for that.
We'll get back to the conversation in just a moment. But first, I wanted to tell you about ONTIC resources. In the world of safety, security, and protection, we know that gathering and sharing information is crucial. That is why we created our Resource Center as a hub for security strategies, best practices, and tools and tips to do your job more efficiently. Take a look at our articles, checklists, guides, industry frameworks, and more. Check out the link in the episode description to visit ONTIC resources or visit ontic.co/resources. Mikey, when you were talking through that scenario, I hearkened back to, I think it was 87, and we had a threat actor in DC who was there to attack the president and secretary of state and so forth. And um, fortunately, we were able to grab him in cooperation with the Secret Service, Metropolitan Police Department. And I remember talking to that individual at a St. Elizabeth Hospital. And I said, well, how did you follow the motorcade? And he said, well, I simply just sat outside and watched the motorcade leave the State Department. And then I just got in my car and I followed behind and drove over to Bethesda where the secretary had lived. And the light bulb went off on my head that what we were doing just simply wasn't working, right? And then, and I'm sure Cindy and Mike, you know this as well as I do, that the technology evolution in this space, the great things that Verkada is doing and Ontic is doing, and so forth, has just really changed the face of protection. What do you think, Cindy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the ability, as you both described, but I think Butler is probably a great example of just having that pre-incident, pre-attack behavior, um, and being knowledgeable and technology giving us that full picture. And if it's just a matter of being able to, go in and, like Mike, you said, typing in white van, or individuals out of sight, or whatever it is, and bringing that up and being able to surface that information and then say, okay, let's see if we can identify this person. And then, in my world, in the protective intelligence threat assessment world, of saying, okay, what else can we find out? What else do we know? And being able to connect all those dots together and say, okay, this is the limited amount of information that we know. Typically, how do we protect against it? And it gives us every tool that we need to be able to take that protective stance and make sure people get in and out okay. I mean, to ensure that there's not another Benghazi, to ensure that there's not another Butler. I mean, we in our former lives have seen the changes that came out, post Reagan shooting, and when the Secret Service took on the Exceptional Case Study Project, completely changed the way we did protection. That was the philosophy of threat assessment. Now, when we've got technology, we need to completely change the way we do protection again by adding in these tools that give us a much better picture than we can get from being on the ground ourselves, from using manpower, as opposed to having technology do that for us.
Absolutely, and that's one thing great about Verkada, and you can get this. You don't have to be in a SOC or a GSOC. You can get it right to your phone, right? And that to me is a game changer in itself, because I don't have to have my people be tied to it. I get an alert when a line has been crossed, basically a line that you draw virtually. When the AI recognizes something has been crossed, then you want to know more about it and alarm you about it. That's, to me, it's like, I wish I would have. And that's kind of why I'm passionate about it in a lot of ways, because I seen what it was when we didn't have it. Now that we do have it, it's like, come on, guys, let's let's make this happen. It's like this would be a lot easier on you. I mean, if you can identify loitering, and our cameras can identify loitering. Basically, more than two people together, it'll alarm you to tell you that more than two people have come together, right? Loitering, it could be there's meeting, a couple's just meeting to do with it, or it could be, again, planning for something else, right? But you at least want to know that the loitering is happening.
I,
Yeah.
this could go back to United Healthcare, and could we have seen the pre-attack, pre-incident behavior of that individual, scoping out, surveilling, and we understand, those that understand threat assessment understand pre-incident behavior, and like you said, hey, is loitering just two people meeting up and it's an innocent thing, or is it pre-incident behavior? You have a big event, you have an event that's getting that will get attention, um, and sometimes negative attention. And do we need to, make sure that we have eyes on that before the actual event happens? Absolutely. It gives us that threat picture.
You know, Cindy and Mike, I was thinking as you guys were chatting, just the evolution of technology in this space, and I was fortunate to have been talking to some of the old Secret Service agents, Cindy and Mike, that are still alive, that were on the Lancer detail, the JFK detail at Dealey Plaza, and in those days they had what they call flashcards, a 3x5 index card. Hell, I still use them for notes for my books. And on those little flashcards, they had a picture of the threat actor, and then you turned it over, and it had the physical descriptors of that individual. And then you fast forward to the 80s, where we were still doing that on bolos or photocopies of sheets and pass them around details and so forth. And how far we've come, and when you look at systems like Ontic or Verkada today, where you can get it all on your smartphone, is just simply amazing from a just an evolution perspective. But Mike, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. You've had such a storied career in the protection space, which especially with the protection of foreign dignitaries and so forth. And one of our all-time favorites, obviously, was the protection of Princess Diana, which we had a lot of joint operations with and so forth. Could you share a few words about that? Because I've tried to explain to folks over the years as to how she was special. And for those of you who may be watching or listening to this podcast, you can see several pictures of Mike as the agent in charge of the Princess Diana detail. So I'll toss it back to you, Mike.
No, listen. I was fortunate enough to be asked by the British Embassy. Said, "Listen, we like you," because I was in DPD at the time, our Dignitary Protection Division, and so I was with a German one day, a Saudi the next day, and so forth and so. Well, I got with, believe it or not, Princess Anne in Nashville, Tennessee. She was show jumping. She's a world class show jumper. And so I was with her. It was very nice, working with the British Embassy and also with the Metropolitan Police out of London, and it went really well. Well, they liked what they saw apparently, and said, "Hey, can we utilize?" I'm like, "Listen, I'm only a 24-year-old. Well, actually, I was 26 at that time. I can't. You can't ask me. I got to do my leadership. My leadership's got to say yes or no." And so they said, "Okay." So next person that came in was Prince Charles. And so I headed up that detail. And we took Prince Charles from New York to Washington, D.C., then on to Vero Beach, Florida for polo, right? And so that was, again, another, he was very nice, just a guy, but he was by himself, obviously. Then the coup was it's like, listen, we think Princess Diana will be coming to New York in February of 1989, and we'd like you to head up. It's like, well, I don't know, that's too big of a detail. That's going to probably go for somebody senior, but I'll probably be on it, probably as a shift leader. Sure enough, the top dogs took it, It's like, okay, you're shift leader. But this was amazing detail. I've never seen this before. New York basically pulled out the red carpet for her, right? In the late 80s, it was all about the royal family. It was about Princess Diana. And I've never seen this before. Streets basically coming in from Kennedy Airport out there to all the way into Manhattan. The streets were clear. It was like the Pope, right? It was just an amazing thing to coming through there. And I forget the hotel that we stayed at, but she was always giggly up and down because I think the reason why she was by herself, she was happy to be there. Just a exceptionally energized person, really, really nice. But the energy around her and her team at that time was just fantastic. You couldn't ask for a better detail. So we did a lot in New York. We went to Harlem for the AIDS hospital that was up there. We also did housing projects. We also did some really nice to do stuff. But every time she was very nice. So I remember this today. We're in the elevator. I'm in front, and the front door closes, and then we get her in. So I'm right there. She's right behind me. And all of a sudden, I hear my earpiece goes out. She just pulls it out and yanks out my earpiece. It's like, and then she looks around and she says, hee hee hee. It's just like, I was like, oh man, this is, and it was like, okay, good. And it's like, it was, how can you, I love that, right? You're not going to get that from some stodgy foreign minister, right? You're going to get this from Princess Diana. And that's just way, and then she got out and she literally skipped to her room. And it's like, how do you keep up with that? Just let her go. You know, it was a magical time. It really was. Saying goodbye to her, she brought each one of us in, the leadership in to give a picture of, and I still have it actually. And it was just an amazing thing. She was just very kind with her time with us. So it was a special one.
Well, I think we've all been very fortunate in our careers to get a behind the scenes look at how these senior foreign officials and senior government officials live, not only within the Secret Service and our days with the Diplomatic Security Service. In closing, Mike, we ask all of our guests this question here at OnTick. What does connected intelligence mean to you?
Well, since I'm pretty apprised on what connected intelligence is, I will say this. It used to be about understanding the ground, the intelligence, the operation, the principle, or the target, or whatever, right? It's all connected to make sure it went. But with OnTick, it's different. It is about proactive and visual intelligence, working with access control, working with alarms, working with intercom, working with onto the mailroom and also guest. All of that in one package. And that is an amazing fact. That to me right now and on top of my mind is interconnected intelligence, which is all in one package.
Well, Mike, uh, it's been an honor and a privilege to get you on our podcast. We really thank you and Verkada for making yourself available today. And before I go, Cindy, anything you would like to say for some closing remarks with Mike?
Uh, Thank you as well. Not only for this, for your service, for everything that you've done for our country.
Now, listen, guys, I'm very fortunate to have you guys in on this too because I'm basically working or talking to two PII, protected intelligence starters, right? People that are in the world that know it very well and was part of the groundswell of protected intelligence. Everything that we utilize today to understand a problem set or an individual or anything has to do with due diligence and intelligence. And both you guys are best in class in that. So that's the secret sauce for a good program protecting anything, people, places, or facilities.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Good seeing you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely too.
Thanks for listening in. To find more episodes, visit us at ontic.co/podcasts. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on your streaming platform of choice. Plus, we'll be selecting reviews to read on the show, so leave one, and you might hear yours featured in an upcoming episode. Know someone who would be a great podcast guest? Or have questions you'd like us to answer? Email us at podcast@ontic.co. This episode was produced by AJ McKeon, and I'm Fred Burton. Thanks for listening.